And welcome back, everybody. I'm back again, and I hope you've all had a wonderful Christmas and New Year, because I haven't done that sort of shit yet. So, yes, hope you all had a wonderful time and you got a nice relaxing break. Today, I am chatting to a teacher of mine who I went and spent a midweek with, I think. I can't remember now. But I
Five
spent
nights.
5 days. I spent 5 days
Mm.
studying with Sally, who we're going to talk to. She's also Jen. Obviously, you know my wife, Jen. She's obviously Jen's teacher too, who spent numerous weekends and time studying with Sally. So, hello, Sally Parks. Can you introduce yourself, please, and let us know who you are and why we've studied with you, maybe?
Ah, here you are. That's quite deep. That's going in deep straight away. Who am I? Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Parks. I've been teaching wellbeing since 1998, so in the actual last century, which is quite strange to think about. I started off teaching fitness stuff when high impact aerobics was the thing. However, my knees didn't like it, so by about my mid-20s, I had to switch to Pilates and yoga, which wasn't a problem because I absolutely loved it anyway. And I've been doing it ever since. So I'm basically unemployed. I'm unemployable, so I've had to run my own business. Very
Me too.
yeah,
Me too.
Wibs knows very high up on the ADHD Richter scale. So I have to employ myself, which is best for everyone around me, to be honest. And so I've run my business since my mid-20s. I'm 46 now, and I've moved more towards women's well-being as a speciality in the last 10 years, which is how I met Wibs and his wife, because they came and did my pre and postnatal training. I write a bit, so I write for magazines. I've got a few books out and stuff, which they're out on. Yeah, hey, there it is. Yeah, I've got an anatomy book and things like that, which I'm particularly proud of, because I was called quite slow at school, and I my dyslexia was missed, and yeah, I had a few names thrown at me. So in your face, teachers. How you doing? How you
Middle
doing
finger up.
now? So
Exactly.
there's another pointer to not let people tell you what and who you are. You know who you are, and you can do anything basically.
And also, when
Um,
you're at school, just to know that, well, I've discussed this millions of times with
I
different
don't think
people on
schools are
this,
like that anymore, but
but well, no, to a certain degree, though. So even if it doesn't, like, however you are at school does not dictate how you're going to be in life.
for
Like, do you know what I
sure.
mean? I was pretty, I wasn't exactly the smartest learner, but yeah, I've kind of, I don't know, I still probably learn more now than most people do, because I just have
Yeah.
interests. Just follow your interests and you'll keep learning. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you're forced to learn something you're not particularly interested in, you just it's near impossible to engage for a lengthy period of time in order to learn that subject. You know, for as long as you need to in order to learn it. You don't literally don't switch on the right brain chemicals to
No,
engage. You literally can't.
no. So there we go. So basically, that's how I met Sally. So I don't think I was your first. Maybe I was your first. Maybe I was your second um, male yoga teacher who came to do your pregnancy. I think you'd had one
Yeah,
before
I
me
can't remember if it was
abroad.
before or after I went to teach in Ho Chi Minh
I
City,
think
because
it
I
was
had two male
after
teachers on that. Okay, so you were my third.
third. I was
Third.
the first
And it stayed
UK.
at that figure. It stayed at
No
that
more
figure.
since.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I had a lovely chap, Mike, who came on a postnatal training in London. Yeah, so there's four actually. Four. And he
Four.
wants to do the menopause training too. What a legend.
I mean, to be fair though, I think that's a pretty a solid idea, because yeah, I mean, to be fair, as a man, even purely not from a work perspective, but from a personal perspective, I think having a better understanding of menopause as you kind of get into relationships later in life is probably a really good idea, to have a greater understanding of what somebody else is going through.
Yeah, I think it pays off.
Yeah, well,
To
hopefully.
have a bit of an
Hopefully.
idea. You want
This
to
is
stay
some,
in that relationship.
yeah, right. This is something that I've kind of discussed with one of my other teachers. So I had him on, Patrick McEwen, who's the breathwork guy. We discussed about the idea of how even just in menstrual cycles for women, and understanding the the fluctuations of progesterone and estrogen at different parts of the cycle, and how that affects your breathing, and how the progesterone can drive up
Yeah.
your breath rate. So therefore, you can end up like having a more stressed and anxious state in certain parts of your cycle. And actually, if as a man, from this is my perspective, if you can begin to notice that, normally you just get like really frustrated and pissed off when your other half is like getting shitty and pissy with you, and because they're,
Yeah,
you know, pre-menstrual or whatever, or post-menstrual or mid-menstrual, potentially
it's all of it.
could be all of it. But I this is hopefully what have begun to found more so, is that actually you can have a far greater um, kind of understanding and kind of care, and be like, actually this is like not necessarily within your control. This is like a big change within hormones, which
Yeah.
is driving something which, you know, probably very, very hard to. It's mind over matter is not exactly an easy thing to do in that situation.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you just need, from a women's perspective, sometimes you just need a bit of time on your own, and that
Yeah,
can be quite hard for the other person to understand if they don't work like that.
yeah,
And sometimes you just need a bit more rest. Sometimes you need to go for a run. It just really differs with everyone,
yeah,
and throughout the month, as you say, it totally differs. So just even if people have just got a vague awareness of the, you know, the ups and downs of it, it's helpful, because then they know it's not about them.
mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully it's not about them.
Well, I mean, it
uh,
could be.
it could be.
It could be. Let's face it. Men can be pretty shit at
And the
times.
cycle is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah,
Yeah, but yeah, just that little bit of rest. But I think we're moving into a different age with that now. It's okay to talk about it. I mean, we had still remember the talk about periods at school. We got given um some sanitary wear, and no one really knew how to use it, and we got these little pink bags we had to hide in. And then we sort of went back to the change rooms. It was in a PE lesson, and we had to sort of like, all the we were all giggling and not, you know, making sure the boys didn't know what we'd been up to and all that. It was really messed up, actually, when you look back. It really messed up.
it's
It
really
was,
crazy, isn't it? Because
yeah.
my last podcast I just put out was with Jamie Abrams, who's like a, well, she's a bit like you. She's been teaching wellness and health and stuff literally for 20 odd years. And, you know, she's moved more into like the sex coaching world of things, and actually
Okay.
like sex relations, you know, relationship coaching, stuff like that. But, you know, we were having this whole conversation about actually how crazy it is, how little education there is around, you know, menstruation, and it, you know, taking it forward also into like understanding kind of sex and relationships and whatever else. But it's
Yeah.
crazy. That's something that every single like woman, so literally 50, well, maybe it's like 48 or 51% of the population, whatever it is, goes through. And it's
Yeah.
essentially just like, shh, don't tell anyone, and just, you know, stick it in there and
Yeah.
shh, don't let anyone know. And it's like, we're in 2023, and yet it's even now, even though I'd say it's getting better, like it's still one of those giggly subjects that you kind of go like,
It's still really odd. It's still really odd, and there's still sort of a lot of misinformation, and that changes from culture to culture as well. That level of
yeah,
misinformation too, and prejudice, etc. Of course, but in the West, it's yeah, it's still kind of odd. And yeah, but I can see it getting a little better. That, like, for example, sanitary wear is changing. It's, you know, you've got options to have less chemicals in it. No one knew about that. Like,
mm,
I've only learned about that in the last 5 years, and I'm in this arena. So, you know, the layperson, how are they going to know just the amount of chemicals that go into your skin using them and things like that? I use Wear 'em Out now.
right,
They're on Instagram, reusable, no chemicals, really really good quality
yeah,
stuff. It's quite an investment, but long term, of course, it saves you money. So I'm all over that now, and
yeah,
there's loads of different options. So I think it's nice people are getting to getting to know that. And actually, I was walking through Marks and Spencer's the other day, just a shortcut through through the other side of town, and they actually had period pants in there. So that's a massive step.
yeah, man,
That's, I
definitely.
mean, that's super cool. That was really great to see. But it's kind of a shame in a way, because little independents started those up, and the
And
reusable
now
stuff.
it's,
But now, of course, the big corporations are getting into it. It's still better though. It's still better because obviously they're not going to go into landfill. So there's so
yeah,
many benefits for that. But yeah, it is mind blowing. And just, and with regards to women's health, there's so many things, and for men too, actually. But I'm not too well versed on that. But subjects that don't get discussed with regards to well-being, and as you know, I teach pregnancy yoga,
mm,
teach training, and even talking about birth, you know, that's another still kind of censored subject, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, everything around that as well. I mean, I don't know why this is just, come off my head really, but like even post birth, let's say, with women and men later in life, it's definitely true. But like even around like incontinence, and this is a big thing which I'm sure that you've had plenty of dealing with. Maybe we can just kind of chat about this for a little while. But like, because I know that I've kind of ended up working with quite a few women and men. There's a massive things to do with men as well, and it's just, I mean, that's just not even talked about the fact that men might have like incontinence due to pelvic
Or even that
floor.
they've got a pelvic floor. I've never heard any instructor, apart from Ash Dangies, talk about Milliband all the time,
Yeah,
mention that men might have a pelvic floor, or
yeah,
will have a pelvic floor. It's
yeah.
like, it's
Well, not that they
bizarre.
might.
They might. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
it's just,
it's very odd. But actually, as I said about pregnancy yoga, I thought, you know what, postnatally it's even more so, because baby's out, okay, let's crack on with life and get back to normal. But it's, of course, it's never like that.
yeah.
And I've talked to women that have had even young women 5 years later were still suffering with continence. They're bad, and as you know, that's all connected anyway. Going to the bathroom ones and twos, and it's just, and they're just putting up with it because they don't know who to go to.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of it's suggesting that, oh, just go and get help, go and get help. But where do you go and get help? I went to the GPs recently. I do that very reluctantly because I've been quite disappointed before,
Hmm.
and again got no help. This
Yeah.
was for with regards to hormonal levels currently, and it's just like, well, even when you go and try and get help, it's not that great,
No, I mean,
and it's
on that,
potluck.
I mean, Jen's had the same issues with hormonal stuff with the GP. She went and essentially they just said you're depressed, take some antidepressants.
Right? Yes, 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 yes.
And then
I
she
had that.
said, and she was like, I'm not depressed. I've been depressed. I know what that feels like.
Yeah, she knows. She knows what it
I'm
is.
fully aware of that situation. This is not what's going on. There's something very different. And it was like, well, tough shit. Take some antidepressants.
It's the not being listened to that really, really irks. I
Yeah.
think
I mean,
that
that's
it's
why, I mean,
the
yeah, I had a guy, Tomo, sorry, on my podcast, and I he's doing his PhD in like endocrinology and stuff at the moment about toxins and
ooh,
thyroid health and all sorts like this. But he works with lots of women in particular, men and women, but women in particular. And I mean, that's one of my most listened to podcasts now because I think all the women just went, "Oh my god!" Like he's just explaining everything I feel. And then I've had quite a few of my clients go to see him and they've all said exactly what you said. Like, I felt listened to.
yeah. And then you get the calm, and then you're more
Yep,
receptive to what's offered.
exactly, absolutely. Um, well, on that, let's just jump back a little bit because we kind of got. Well, I
Woo!
want to get back to the maybe like the postnatal. We'll start postnatal, then we'll go prenatal. How about that? Let's go
Yeah, let's do
postnatal
it.
because I feel that, as you said, in today's societies, we are almost well. I'm a man. I'm not told to do fuck all. But as a woman, you're essentially kind of pushed to go, I'm going back to work. I'm done. I'm pregnant. I've had my baby. It's out. I
Yeah,
had 6 months. Now I need to be a size
if you're
eight again.
lucky.
I need to not piss myself when I go on a trampoline and I need to go back to work. And so, and I know obviously having done your training, we kind of went into some of that, like, it was kind of
Yeah.
pregnancy side. But yeah, let's just kind of break
And
into.
that's before we even think about, so think about continence, that's the thing that initially jumps to mind. But the extreme anxiety that a mother and baby can be, or toddler can experience when they're apart as well,
Mhm,
which is just is suffocating. I used to get chest pains. I still do
mhm,
sometimes if I have to be away for work. It's so painful. And
mhm.
even though they do your head in, because I'm a mum of two, as you know, they drive you mad. They're yours,
Yeah,
and they're like, all right, they're little nutters, but they're my nutters, and I
and
don't
they
know
really
what
are
I'm
actually a
feeling.
part of you. Do you know what I mean? They actually grew themselves within you, and you kind of
Yeah,
felt that whole thing.
yeah. So having to be a part when they're, especially when they're in their first year, to go back to it. And even though I'm self-employed, I think people, when you're self-employed, they think you can pick and choose what you do, but it's kind of the opposite, as we just
Worse.
discussed before, well, a while ago. before the podcast. It's yeah, and you always feel like you've got something to do. So I really struggle with, because I still consider myself postnatal. They're 5 and 8 now, but I've still got repercussions of that currently. That you know, you think it's going to get better, but I still get that separation anxiety, and I still feel like I've always got something to do. So sometimes when I'm with them, I'm not really engaging with them. I'm thinking about, you know, I'm making a list in my head. I've got to email that person back. I've got to message Wibs. I've got to do this and that, and I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I don't think I have the answer, apart from being a lot more selective with what work I choose, so it's actually
Yeah,
worthwhile doing. So then I can put more money into our family life and more focused time, which is obviously more important than money. We need money though.
yeah, yeah,
So it's a continuous juggling act, and I think that really adds into the postnatal journey. It's not just, as you know, it's not just a physical thing. It's very mental, and mental and physical are completely and utterly intertwined anyway.
yeah.
I know if I get anxiety, which I'm very prone to, my back starts to hurt, my lower back and my diaphragm, and then I get chest pain. So it's all, which I know you'll know inside and out why that
Mm.
happens. So it's all, whoa, I feel like that's the side that's not talked about, and I don't think anyone wants to talk about it because they feel like they're being a bad mother,
Yeah, yeah.
as well. So I'd like to, you know, at some point do a bit of writing about that and open up the conversation a bit more on that, because it's perfectly normal, and it's not just mums that have just had babies.
No.
I think it's for life, to be honest. My mum's passed now, but she used to say it's worse when the kids are grown up, because you have no control over them, so you don't even know where they are. I mean, I went backpacking. When I look back now, I think, God, it must have been awful for her, because I got a one way to Sydney when I was like 23 or something. I don't know how old I was, early 20s. So I thought, all right, screw this, I'm off. I went to Oz, got a one way. This was before smartphones or Facebook or anything, so no one really knew where it was. I hitchhiked. I remember I hitchhiked with a lorry driver down the west, down WA, down the whole coast. I used to sleep in the back. I mean, what a natter. I think I gave him $50 towards petrol. So it was totally sound. But I mean, just the things I used to do, her anxiety must have been through the roof. She never asked what I'd been doing though, because she knew what I was like. So she
Yeah,
never asked, you know, if you don't want to know, don't ask. But I think, God, the anxiety must have been awful. But I remember her saying that when when your kids are grown up, it's much, much worse. So I think I've got more
that's
to
really interesting.
come.
It is funny, isn't it? Because I mean, I've kind of said before, but like my mother's not exactly a maternal being. Like, there's not really many
Okay.
maternal bones in her body. I don't think. Like, you know, not in any way saying she's a bad mother, but she's not
No,
a.
I just don't think that connection's made sometimes for
And
whatever
yeah,
reason.
and so I think from my perspective, my whole family is very independent. Like, we are just a very like we've all
Right.
just fucked off and done our own things, and it's like, yeah, we'll be in touch when we're in touch, and I'm going to live my life and you live your life, and you know, crack on. But then obviously that's it's definitely different for different people, and I do wonder if it's like, because we're definitely more of a bit of a in touch of our emotions and stuff these days, and say, you know, post-Victorian England, sort of through till the stiff upper lip post-war type things.
Yeah, where you had to
Whether that's,
disassociate from everything.
yeah, like if people are much more like, if parents and mothers probably feel it a lot more, whether they probably did and they just went, well, I'll just repress that and push that down somewhere.
Yeah, I reckon that might have been. I often think about those times as well, actually, because my mum used to talk. She'd have been uh, early 80s now. She used to talk a lot about her mum and her mum's mum and how it was for them. And I remember thinking, and it was hard. It was really flipping hard, and hard times, as Dickens said. And I often thought they must have had to repress so much, and that stiff upper lip. I know we would mention that now, like with negativity, but actually it was probably essential to get through life at that time.
Mm.
We didn't have them. I've just not GPs, but that's not a general thing. It's just my recent experience. But we didn't have the healthcare we have. We didn't have, just all the stuff we have now. Yeah, just what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really hard time. So I think I often wonder if they did just have to disassociate from what was going on in order to get through. Maybe that was better. I don't know.
yeah.
Probably wasn't, but
Well, it's always
a
like
lot less
grass is green.
headspace.
It's probably always the grass is green. I'm sure that some people would from then would look at it now and think it's better, and then other times they probably look at it, because I know my
True.
grandmother was like 94 when she died, and she was very much like a stiff upper lip like type woman. like brilliant grandmother, probably not the greatest mother in some ways, but again, like uh, it was very much when we were grandkids and we would turn up at her house we'd go for like 2 weeks over the summer, and the parents weren't allowed to stay. They were allowed to drop us off and then had to piss off. And so the kids, there was
Oh,
like
that's funny.
like 7 cousins all hanging out
Strong
together.
boundaries.
And essentially it was, luckily we had like a farm with like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 acres or whatever, 10, I don't know how big it was, but essentially it was like, right, feed them at breakfast, piss off, get outside, and then
Mm,
come back in at lunch, and then you can go off again. And we just played in woods and went rowing boats over rivers and stuff and all sorts.
yeah,
And I'm not saying, she was
actually
amazing.
sounds
I
awesome.
loved her to bits, but it was very much like a hands off, just like go and like scruff your knees and have accidents and just toughen
Yeah,
up and you'll be all
brilliant.
right. And yeah, it's kind of interesting, that kind of parenting model compared to I guess what is
Compared to us
more common
helicopter
today.
parents now.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's a
mean, I don't
very,
think my mum ever walked us to school.
well, that's the same with me. I literally remember walking to school. Okay, it was like less than half, like it was quarter of a mile probably maximum, but I remember my big brother walking me and my little brother to school when he was probably 9, I was
Yeah,
7, and my brother was 5, and we
right.
just, the three of us just like walk up the road
Yeah.
to school. Like, can you
I used
imagine
to
that
walk about a
happening
mile on
now?
my own.
Yeah, can you imagine that now?
You just wouldn't. It was always all right. But
A
yeah, you
10
just
year old
wouldn't
walking
now. It's
a
totally
7 and a
weird.
5-year old to school.
Yeah. But going back to your thing you said about your mum, but not, you didn't
Mm,
feel she was maternal. I think that's something that's not discussed as well. And
yeah.
I remember with my first daughter, I had quite a very hard time in the labour, and I remember just feeling very numb for about the first year. I didn't feel a great I knew she was my daughter, and logically I had to protect her,
Hmm.
but I didn't. I'd get the odd minute of where I felt deep love for her, and then it would completely go. So
Hmm.
I think so. It took about 18. I'd say about 18 months to feel like a constant connection, and I didn't really discuss it with anyone because I didn't feel like anyone would get it. But I mean, maybe there was someone out there that would, but I didn't want to. I had high anxiety because my mum was dying at the same time, and my stepdad was terminally ill. He's died as well now. So I had this mental anxiety, and I was very worried she's going to be taken away from me. So you go into this really dark place in your head, and I feel like that's not talked about
No,
enough
absolutely.
either. Um, but I remember at that time thinking, oh, maybe how I'm feeling is why some women aren't maternal. It doesn't rectify for them, and that connection never gets made. It's
Like, I
just
mean,
something I pondered, and
what
it's
you've
no
said though
one's
makes,
fault.
like, because I was at my dad's the other week and we were basically discussing my mum and her kind of maternal thing, because and it turned like, and I'd never, my dad or my mum had ever said it, but like he had said, like, when my big brother was born, they then, like, there was never that close a bond, if you know what I mean, between Tim and my mum, and then
Right.
Tim's my big brother, and then they went on holiday without Tim, like left him with my grandparents type thing when Tim was about, I want to say like 8 months or something like that,
Oh, okay.
and that was the first time, like, my dad said he'd like, my mum was like crying or something, and he'd said like he kind of found her and she was like, I really need Tim, and that was like the first time that she'd really
Okay.
had that. And then after that, that bonding process then begun from
Yeah.
there. So it's
So
almost
it was
like,
delayed.
yeah, like 6 or 8 months delayed from what most people get, is they get the baby, put it in their arms, it's immediately there. And I think
Yeah.
that is the sort of thing which, I mean, I didn't know that, and I've like, I don't think any mother would probably ever really want to admit that, because it seems like it's completely
Like it's a
like,
choice, but I think it's chemical.
but it's all I mean, but it's also like, even if it's not a choice, like it's almost forbidden, like it's a bad thing to ever admit that, like, actually I've just
Yeah.
grown this child but I don't have an immediate connection with it. And actually, like we've said about this hormonal thing, like everything, actually finding an understanding for someone and being able to kind of go, that's cool, do you know what I mean, like this is not your fault, and like
Yeah.
actually being able to understand someone is far more important than just kind of making people feel like they have to hide it. Because again, like you said, that's going to drive anxiety, that's going to drive depression, it's everything that
And
goes with
drive
it.
oxytocin down, which is your bonding hormone. So it's
Exactly.
just this constant kind of seesaw of
Vicious
chemicals, and
cycle.
sometimes you hit jackpot, and a lot of the time you probably don't. And
Yeah.
again, it's like you say, it's no one's fault. It just happens sometimes. But there does seem to be quite a correlation with birth trauma and that feeling of disconnection I've noticed from talking, teaching
Yeah.
lots of women
I mean, you've
and
taught a lot
whatnot.
of women as well,
I have. It's my thing.
and
Yeah.
four men.
Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so with
Mm.
your, let's kind of go into your practice a little bit, because obviously, as you said, because I like, was it your pregnancies which maybe put you in the direction of wanting to work with women
No,
particularly
I was
more?
doing it ages before.
Were you?
So I was always into the very more more Shiva way of working, shall we say.
Yeah.
So very fiery. I used to teach loads of spin. I used to power lift. I would do long distance on my
Ashtanga.
bike. I run London Marathon 4 times, all this kind of thing. I couldn't sit still, basically. I'm fidgeting now because I'm having to sit on a bloody chair. This is a
Me
nightmare
too.
with
Me too.
so I was always really, really on it, but I was just plagued with injuries all the time because I never let my body. I thought I knew a lot about the body at the time, but I didn't. I didn't at all. I knew a lot about muscles and joints and bones, but I didn't know about the endocrine system. I didn't,
Hmm.
I just didn't know about recovery. And yeah, so I was hammering myself. I mean, a massive exercise addiction with a couple of eating disorders chucked in as well. So my body fat was at sort of the same level as an athletic man,
Yeah.
and amenorrhea as well. So no periods for quite a while, which I didn't really care about because then it didn't hinder my training.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, so on the outside I looked like, maybe someone to, oh, I want to aim to look like her. I did a bit of modeling here and there as well, but I was probably more, well, I would say more unhealthy than someone that hits the gym just twice a week and eats
Yeah.
whatever they like. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But it took me quite a long time to realize that, and it wasn't till I don't even know how I found the training. I can't remember now, but my travels in Australia that I mentioned where I hitchhiked, I just found this beautiful yoga studio in Melbourne. It was called the Dance of Life, and it was awesome. And there was loads of Indian wall hangings up and beautiful
Amazing.
incense. It was just really authentic, and it was all purple and orange, and I loved it. And I turned up to class once there because I was in Melbourne for 3 months. I had some work there doing care work, so I stopped there for 3 months, and I was the only one to turn up. And I had this amazing one-to-one with this chap there. I can't remember his name now. I mean, it was 20 years ago. And that just switched me on to yoga. So I say to my students now, even if you get one or two people to do your best, because they'll be with you for life. And I would have gone there for the rest of my life had I not had to move on.
Yeah.
I went to Thailand after that. And I was like, wow, you get those light bulb moments. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, hell yes. And I'd never felt like that before, like complete calm. Whereas before I'd do like a 10-mile run and go, I need more. Okay, I'll get a bite to eat, but I need more. I need to do this afternoon. I'm going to go kickboxing this afternoon. Then this evening I'll do my weights and I'll stretch out before bed. I'll be up at 6 and I'll go again. I didn't have that thing. I was like, whatever happens today, I feel good. It was just all new to me. It was all new to me, and my body felt really balanced. And long story short, I just never moved away from yoga. However, those exercise addictions did rear their head again, because then I got really, really, really into Ashtanga and hot yoga, which I'm not knocking. They were still better than what I was currently doing at that time, i.e., slowly killing myself. However, I got so into it. I mean, I was hitting it twice a day, Ashtanga, Mysore style, 6 a.m. and then Bikram. I've said his name, I'm so sorry. I said he
So it
said
was
Voldemort.
Bikram. I mean,
In the
on that,
afternoon. And again, the eating stuff came back, and all this kind of thing. And then so I was just circling back to when I said, and then I found this training. Then I found a training with Uma Dinsmore Tuli,
yeah, yeah,
I really, really dig. And she is a wonderful women's health yoga teacher. And I went to her pregnancy yoga training. That was in 2007. And that was like 10 light bulbs went on. I was like, oh my God, it's okay to practice gently. And actually, I feel even better again now. And
yeah,
it just showed me a much more gentle way of working, but still with massive benefit, not only physically, but energetically as well,
yeah,
while still honoring the tradition of yoga. Um, and more importantly, honouring the female body. So I bring that into all my teachings now, and I still, look back on. I've still got all her training manuals that I refer back to for my own practice, etc. And her book Yoni Shakti I refer to quite a lot. It's one of those books. It's so big you can just kind of flop it open and read a page, and you learn something completely new every time.
And also on page 7 or something, it's normally on the shelf here, but Jen's obviously put it somewhere else. But like she talks, I was literally flicking through it when Jen first got it, and on like page 7 or something, in like near enough in bold, it just talks about like cunt yoga, which fucking cracked me up. I was like, oh, that's a
her thing.
strong.
Well, from my understanding, is she's reclaiming the word.
Reclaiming the word. Well, that's
A
exactly
much
as it should
nicer
be.
way.
As
It's
it
a
should
Hindu
be.
word anyway, isn't it? It's not even ours.
Exactly. So I mean, on that though, okay, so I want to pull that part a little bit, because I wanted to kind of, so anyone who knows me, has been following me for a few years, knows that like my yoga practice has become less and less since I did my training 8 years ago. I trained Ashtanga, and I loved it prior to my training, but I was not like a 6 a.m. every day practice. So I do Ashtanga like maybe 3 days a week, and I'd never do the entire sequence. I would do all the standings, all the starting bit, and I'd kind of go up to like Navasana essentially, and then I would kind of maybe one or two other bits, and then I would
you're
kind
one of those Ashtangis.
Well, I was when I
That's what the
started.
Mysore crew would say.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, I want to do this, and then I went and did the training, and I just and I realized I fucking hated Ashtanga.
Yeah, because it's like, no, you can't just do this. It's
because
this.
it was 7 days. Oh no, sorry, it was 5 days a week. The sixth day we did more of a just a vinyasa aimed at something type thing, but it was 5 days a week every morning. And I went, fuck, my body really hates this.
Yes.
And I, I ended up constantly badgering them and going, can we do some fucking yin, please? Like, I'm over this. I want to do
But
some
they loved
yin.
you.
And they were like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they were like, if you want to do yin, just go do it yourself. So I would go off and do my own yin practice on the beach. And like, I'm a big fan of Bernie Clark, and I adore that man.
Oh yeah, he's
Like,
amazing. Yeah.
and I ended up so I stayed on for a second month, and
Where were you?
I was in Goa.
Go.
So
I could have guessed. Yeah.
standard. So I ended up, I was at Cranties in Goa. And so I ended up having to do like the drop-in classes. It's basically a cheap way of like, oh yeah, stay for another month. And I did some more training with my meditation teacher, and it was like part of my payment was like, or part of the way I don't know, I can't quite remember how, but I had to teach the drop-in classes for experience, and so just free experience,
free labor,
and I ended up saying like, I want to do a yin class, and they were like, okay, you can do a yin class or a drop-in class. I had 53 people turn up for that drop-in class. There's normally like 3 or 4 people turned up for a drop-in class of Ashtanga or Ashtanga Vinyasa, and I had 52 people turn up. Basically, the entire beach turned up, because and this kind of goes back to what you said. I feel like is people don't. I don't feel people have the ability to necessarily, the permission to go gentle. And so actually when someone and so when someone says, oh, I'm going to do a gentle thing, actually, so like, I mean, it clearly resonated on a beach in Goa where everyone went, I want to just chill out and do absolutely nothing. And I do feel that with all of the craziness, like you mentioned, Bikram, whilst those practices are still happening, maybe not under those titles, and Patabi Joyce turned out to be a bit of a maniac as well, and whatever else. Like I kind of feel there's more and more permission for those traditional practices to not necessarily be the main focus of yoga these days, and actually gentle. There's a guy, Jay Brown, I think his name is. I don't know if you've heard of. He does a yoga podcast. It's quite an interesting podcast, but like his thing is like gentle is the new strong, and so he just teaches like
it's actually harder in a way. Mentally, I think gentle's harder.
Because you can go and do a strong practice, and it's like being at the gym. You can go and like work your ass off, sweat your nuts off doing inversions and arm balances and a million chaturangas and 500 navasanas, and you can come away from it and you kind of go, okay, I didn't think about work, but I just spent the
Yeah,
entire time thinking, can I work harder now? And actually, but having to sit there in stillness is much, much harder.
it's much harder. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I started questioning my yoga practice because I thought, oh yeah, this, I'm nailing it. And whenever you think you're nailing it, you're not, because you're led by ego, right? When you think you're nailing it, you're being a dick. So I
That's the
basically
advertising for this post, for this video right now.
I came back from Mysore with a bulging disc. I didn't know it was at the time, but later on, scan and stuff. So that's the point. I had to get to extreme pains with my entire spine and down my legs. I was hobbling around Mysore. People were like, "What have you done?" I was like, yoga." It was after a big backdrop. I came up and went, "Whoa, that wasn't right." That's the point I had to get to actually start listening to my body and start seeking out other ways. Of moving. It still took me a good few years though to completely drop that way of working.
Yeah, yeah.
And if I look at old photos, I still think, oh, completely different look, body, aesthetic. So, give that to anyone, they'd probably go, oh yeah, well that one's fitter and and therefore better, but actually much less healthy. I remember my science teacher at school, I was about 12, he said, fit and healthy are two completely different things. And I
Yes,
never forgot that.
yes,
And I learned that the
yes,
hard way. I do a lot less exercise now. I still do something every day. I'm more relaxed on my diet. I'm not light. I'm 12 stone, but I'm much healthier. I actually sleep
yes.
for a start. I mean, not great at the moment, it's perimenopausal, but I sleep. My back is healing. Maybe that's a whole nother podcast. That's been a long journey. My back is healing. I discovered I've got scoliosis after the herniated disc. Actually turned out to be 3 discs. I've got the hat trick. I'm all or nothing. Turned out to be 3 discs.
Nailing it.
I'm totally nailed the hat trick. It took me to that level to start exploring. I actually realized I had scoliosis after after the disc incident, and that's how fast I was moving. I didn't even notice I had scoliosis. That's how out of my body I was. And now
Yeah,
when you look at me, it's like, yeah, of course you've got scoliosis. It's so obvious. But that's how much I think people use movement, exercise, Ashtanga, whatever it is, to stay busy.
yeah,
So
yeah,
coming
yeah,
back
yeah,
to your, what did that teach you? Relaxed is the new strong or something.
yeah. Gentle is the new strong.
Yeah, I could 100% agree with that. It's challenging to mentally, you've got to flex that mental muscle, haven't you, in order to do it? Because when you get still, then the shit comes up that you've got to deal with, and people do not want to do that, myself included. I'm
Oh,
definitely in that camp. It's like
absolutely.
and I have days where I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the pain. Let's bring it up. I've got a few hours to deal with it before the kids come home. I'll
Yeah,
do some journaling. I'll cry a bit. I'll get a bit angry. I may go and punch some things, and then
yeah,
I'm good till next time. But I think you've got to have that space to be able to do it, and also know what's going on. That's another thing that does my head in about the yoga scene. I feel like there's not enough aftercare either. So they'll kind of spin you up, the teacher will spin you up and they'll talk about opening all your chakras and then just like, see you later, see you next week then. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. Hang
yeah,
on a minute. You've left this person wide open. Their back hurts. Their heart's wide open. So that hurts too. They've got high anxiety because they've no idea what's going on. And now they're sobbing.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a whole nother thing that the yoga industry, because it is an industry
is
now, of course,
absolutely.
it's worth an awful lot of money, is doing too. And it's yeah, it's not great, but I feel like the slower the yoga, the more gentle the yoga, the more we can do that, the more there's space to talk about the aftercare, and there's space to do a lovely long shavasana and shut the chakras down and let the body drop back down with regards to adrenaline release and let the oxytocin start flowing. So you should feel calm at the end of a class. I just remember feeling really stressed,
Yeah,
but stress was such a normal state for me. And again, I think that's very common. I didn't mind it. I didn't actually know any different.
yeah. I mean, I
So
think
I was
that's
like, oh,
like
whatever.
pre starting to record. I brought up about Wim Hof, and actually, I think what you've just said there um, kind of ties over to that as well. And we kind of said, as you said, and I've kind of said previously, but people aren't ready to not think that Wim Hof isn't necessarily a good thing for everyone. I kind of feel it's the same for yoga. Like it's hilarious in some ways that people think you can't hurt yourself in yoga because it's movement. You can definitely hurt yourself doing
And it's
walking.
big ranges of movement.
It's big ranges of movement. Um, but that idea of calming down the nervous system, and it technically, so I'm going to just talk Wim Hof for a minute here, just because,
Sure.
as I said to you pre-thing, I worked a night shift this week, and I had a guy who came in younger than me who has basically turned up with chest pain, having in the last like few weeks started doing the Wim Hof method, and he's noticed that since doing that he's been getting all of this like chest pain
Yeah.
and people don't seem to understand that whatever you do, you need to be able to understand that there could be risks for a start. But in the Wim Hof method, they're supposed to technically the breath holds are supposed to be the calming bit, because you do it with no air in your lungs. You don't have the stress response that you would get from carbon dioxide ticking your chemoreceptors off. I feel like I'm going to burp. I don't think I am. Sorry about that. But and it's the same in Ashtanga, same in yoga and whatever else. Like, if you don't get a chance to down regulate afterwards, you've basically just, okay, if you're doing a really gentle yin class, then you're not going to be ramping yourself up as such, unless you're a maniac and going to extreme ends. But again,
Yeah.
hopefully you can listen to yourself and realize that's not the point. But if you aren't down regulating afterwards, I think with Jen and I, for us, like the shavasana is like the big part. And it's kind of one of those things where it can almost, I remember doing my Ashtanga training, as I said, and there was almost these proper Ashtangis, unlike me, but who, like, the idea of like giving this really long, relaxing, going around giving a little massage, anything like that, that was like, no, don't do that. What are you talking about? That's
Yeah.
mental.
Hell.
And actually, that's the bit which most people want to come for. Most people who come to our classes, especially Jen's, because
Yeah.
she goes all out with fucking incense and stuff, and I'm not necessarily quite that much, but they love it, and that's what they want. That's all people want these days, is just to be able to let
It
go and
is.
relax.
But it didn't used to be like that, I don't think. People are like, well, what's the point of Shavasana? It's not burning any calories.
Well,
Like,
exactly.
what's the
Yeah.
point in that?
I mean,
And I used to think like that too, till I
yeah.
learned
I
more
mean, I
about
did
nervous.
not.
I
I was
was one of
always
those
just like,
people.
I was always just like, what? I just get to lie down and do nothing. Amazing. Um,
Yeah. And then when I started teaching yoga more full time, I was like, it started to really annoy me when people left before the Shavasana.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Before I mean, I don't know, quite a few years now. When I think my first foray into yoga was like body balance, like Les Mills body balance,
Oh yeah,
and I just
I like
remember
that.
like, yeah, I mean, it's it
It's
is what
fun.
it is. Yeah, it's fun, but I just remember like you go through like the Tai Chi bit, and then you do the yoga bit, and then there's a bit of Pilates, and then you finish with the Shavasana essentially. And I just remember like 3/4 of the class just gets up and leaves,
Yeah,
and you're
it's
like,
such a shame.
that's the most important part.
It's such a shame. It's
It's
such a shame.
crazy.
Yeah, I don't mind body balance. I think it's just functional movement. It's just increasing your range of movement a little bit, working on your
Yeah,
balance. What's not to love? Yeah. And I
absolutely.
know I know people knock it, but people will knock anything.
But
And
for me, it was my whole path into yoga, which for me,
same. I've done it at my gym where I worked as a personal trainer, and I was like, oh, I feel kind of nice after this.
but it's
Let's
for
dig
me, because
deeper.
for me, mine's been a journey of like my body's a mess, and I need to figure out why, because my knee hurts when I run, and so on. I like enjoy running, but I can't, and then this hurts and I can't, and my back is like, so everything's
Yeah.
always been a, how can I do something to improve my own body? And for me, those kind of practices was like, oh, this led me, the body balance then led me to, oh, I really enjoyed the yoga side. And then I was in Canada and I was snowboarding, and I
Oh, they
loved
have a
doing all the
great
yoga.
yoga scene there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. And then, that's then led me down every other path, which has led me to where I am now, which is the
Sure.
anatomy and motion and the movement development practices and whatever else. Um, and so, yeah, it's kind of understanding that actually just functional movements and consistency with those movements is probably far more important than having a dedicated 90-minute, like, strong
Yeah.
practice. And as you said, fit and healthy being two completely separate things.
Two different things. And I see, I'm going to the gym after this, and I know I'll see at least 10 men in the weights area with kyphosis, and women actually. There's a lot more women in the weights area these days, which is
And
great.
also
I
doing
I,
that,
I
doing
used to
that.
my powerlifting gym. I used to be the only woman there, so it's nice to see more women in hitting the weights for sure. But I can guarantee 90% of them will have some degree of kyphosis. So again, we're moving towards compression of the lungs and diaphragm and
Yeah.
lower back issues, neck issues, and whatnot. But yet they'll feel it. And again, I used to have kyphosis from doing the wrong kind of weights, so I'm not knocking it. It's a journey you go on, and you
Yes.
hopefully learn from it. I had rotator cuff injuries from it, and shallow breath problems.
All been there.
You know, you look fit, you look like you're on the right path, but no, you know, what would be more ideal is, you know, is to halve that weight training session and then open up the body via stretching afterwards, and
Yeah, and I
maybe a
think
little lie down.
the thing is, as you said though, I think rounding back to almost how we started with the menopausal side though, like actually getting some women to weight train, even it doesn't mean you don't have to be
Oh yeah,
powerlifting,
I
but
love weight
like,
training.
but it's one of those things, and again, it's kind of, I don't know, public or, you know, norms of society of like women seem to think as soon as they're going to go and lift weights, they're going to look like Arnie. Um,
Oh, if only.
and do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? You've got to put some serious work, but you can lift weights, and especially postmenopausal or, you know, perimenopausal into postmenopausal, like lifting weights is going to be hugely important, in particular for women, because you guys have got the fucking shit show of like once you've finished menopause,
Bone
your
density.
increased chance of osteoporosis is like exponentially more.
Yeah, yeah, and also, well, there's so I'm actually going to do a post on it today about the benefits of weight training for women on the old Instagram.
Mm,
Um, yeah, well, as you know, there's so many benefits, especially past 40, because I've just written an article on it actually about how collagen production starts to drop in women past 40. So you absolutely must do some sort of resistance training to help counteract that. Because soon as collagen starts to drop, bone density starts to drop too, risk of injury goes up. And then there's the body image side of things as well. So women who weight train, it's been shown over and over again by scientific study that they have better body image of themselves, and they
that's
regard the way they
interesting.
look more favorably. And of course, aesthetics isn't everything, but let's face it, it is something. You can't
It
completely ignore it.
no,
And if you feel better in yourself, you feel better mentally, you know, you feel more confident to do things, you're more comfortable going online, you know, just so many things. I
and
think
again,
it's
that
almost
doesn't
like
have to
a
be
dirty
ripped.
word now to say you want to look good, you know,
Yeah,
whatever you think good is, of course, that's subjective. But I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. And who are we to say what someone else should do anyway?
absolutely. But also, I think what you said though, it's like you don't have to look ripped to feel comfortable in your body. Like, you know, just
Oh, I love
a
a bit of
change,
jiggle.
but just a change in shape might like make you feel really, really uncomfortable in your own body. Like, you know, from an outside perspective, maybe somebody else doesn't even notice you've really changed, but in yourself, you feel like, oh, my jeans are
Yeah,
just a bit tight, or whatever. And that can have like a negative effect. And actually just being able to kind of go, when I lift or when I move and I bear my own body weight, whatever it is, actually I do feel better about my own body and my own body's ability. Like it's not
yeah,
necessarily going to change your shape. It might not even change your shape, but actually having an
might
understanding of your
not.
body's own ability can make you feel so much better in your own health.
Yeah.
And as you say, the knock-on effects for bone density and strength and collagen and all of these other bits and pieces all then have a plus point so that when you are 65, you're not ending up in A&E with a broken wrist or
And
hip or
having
back.
and not even able to carry your own shopping, that kind of thing. I've got older relatives, and they're like, well, I just had to get someone to help me do that. And it's like, well, you should be able to carry a shopping bag,
Yeah,
really. But if you keep asking someone to help you, of course you're not going to be able to, because now you've got muscle wastage. So it's that.
absolutely.
But if for me, if I'm consistently weight training, and I don't get mad with it, I work quite light now, but I do high repetition. Um, I just feel more confident. I'm like, oh yeah, I can lift that. I can move that bit of furniture. Yeah, I can lift my kid up. It's fine.
Yeah,
I don't have to question it. Before, when I was only doing only doing an awful lot of yoga, which actually increased my hypermobility massively
yeah.
because I was doing the wrong kind of yoga too much. And added to the disc problem on my back and scoliosis again, loads of stuff there we could discuss another
Yeah.
time.
I mean, what you just
Um,
said there,
my
sorry, I'm just
hip
going
would
to go
just
back to your
clunk
high
out when I picked my kid
reps.
up.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I mean that from my perspective on women who come to see me, that hip height, I mean, they always favor one side because that's the side which their body wants to favor.
Yeah.
And obviously the repeated usage of that is always then going to drive into, and especially if you're then
And that kid's a progressive overload, right? Just
exactly.
getting
Um,
heavier.
but it was really interesting. I saw a post from Andy Galpin, who he's been on like Andrew Huberman's podcast, and he works in that whole world. And he's I think he's a researcher in strength and conditioning type thing. But you know, he was saying
Awesome.
essentially, high reps and low weight. If you going to fatigue and you're going to endpoint has exactly the same benefits as doing high weight, low reps. I think I said that. Yeah. So
yeah, you do.
high reps, low weight has exactly the same effects on the body as doing the high weight, low reps, but you don't have to put as much perceived stress on
And
the
the
system.
downside to doing high weights, so I used to work to 1 rep. I'd work from 6 repetition max down to 1 rep max, right?
Yeah.
But then I talked to the guys in the gym, and there was problems with knees, hemorrhoids,
Yeah.
bracing, diastasis recti. This was in men, and I remember sitting on the bench when I was getting ready to do a deadlift, and I was 135 kilos, and I was like, I don't think I want to be like this when I'm 40. Like looking at the guys, and I kind of just moved away from it. I was a shame because I loved it, and I was going to compete, but I just thought, yeah, no, this is going to really damage me. And I already had quite a lot of injuries, and I was like, I don't want to be getting knee replacements at 26. I just don't want it. So so I think there's a lot less risk. I know there is a lot less risk as well with doing high rep, low weights. I think there's tons and tons of benefit. I just want to say, I don't want this podcast to come off like I'm knocking working at high intensity level with yoga or any other method. I think it has its place.
Yes.
It's just don't do it all the time.
Yes, but I think the problem is, and this is the post I was trying to post, which Instagram decided not to post, but like the problem with this stuff is that what we see on Instagram and social media and stuff is only really the high intensity stuff. So that's what people seem to automatically feel is the only thing which has the benefit. Now, again, it's the same with everything. It's the same with Wim Hof, or it's the same with Buteyko. Like, there is good times and there's bad times for either one of these things. Powerlifting and low intensity, high rep stuff. Like, there is good times and bad times for anything. But you as a person needs to understand your own body, and I think this is probably where the biggest thing either of us have learned from yoga partly is that we kind of can break ourselves doing it, but also is just an ability to understand your own body and actually be able to take that embody and actually turn it into an embodied practice. I think what it sounds like with you when you started doing Ashtanga, same with me, was actually just because you're doing yoga doesn't mean that it's an embodied practice. And actually learning to embody yourself through movement and through breathing teaches you more than any other practice could really ever do.
Yeah. And actually, I just coming back to your so I'm jumping around a little bit, but your comment about breath retention and Wim Hof, I found that interesting because when I did my pranayama, we were very lucky on my Ashtanga training I did in 2004. We had an amazing pranayama teacher there from north of India, and his name was Sri Tawari, yeah. And we were ever so lucky to get him, and he taught us that breath retention actually stimulates the system. So I'm interested in again, maybe we don't have time to talk about it now, but how Wim Hof talks about that as down regulation.
So because most likely I would suggest, because breath retention on the inhale, so will have more of a stimulating effect, because you end up having this, like, the CO2 is like triggering your chemoreceptors, whereas when it's on the
so
opposite,
is Wim Hof
exhale
hold. Got it. Okay.
No, it will be on an inhale still, but it will be after you've already blown off all of the carbon dioxide. So you have because you hyperventilate so strongly, your level of carbon dioxide completely drops through the floor. So there's no CO2 to trigger your chemoreceptors to tell you to breathe. So therefore, you can sit there in this weird blissed place where you feel no urge to breathe. So therefore, you can completely relax for this long period of time. I still am not that. This is my thinking on the process. I would still suggest that there's far better ways, and actually low, slow, gentle, quiet, exhale dominant breath would be a far better way to downregulate the system than
surely that's going to be better for the general public who are generally inexperienced with all this. No.
Yes,
that would be my logical brain kicking in.
That would be my my thinking too, but unfortunately,
like with yoga, don't go do Mysore class. Don't go do Mysore Ashtanga when you're new to yoga. It's the same with breath work, isn't it? People think because it's breath, it can't hurt you. Yeah, it can.
And also, Wim Hof is a very, very charismatic, crazy Dutch guy, and so you can kind of go, "Wow, look what he can do! I want to do that." And really being able to you know, we're humans, aren't we? Everyone goes, I want to do the crazy shit. And I'm the same, but I think I've just
Yeah.
managed, like you, I think we've both managed to learn that.
When
Easy.
I did London Marathon, you'd see people that clearly never run before. I'm
Yeah.
going to do a marathon. How about you walk around the block every evening?
Yeah.
Start with that. But again, it's that I can do that, that kind of, the 80s epidemic of positive thinking. Do you remember all the self-help books and
Yeah.
everything? We kind of, I remember getting swept up in that. And it did help me an awful lot, actually, because I was quite depressed as a kid. So again, I'm not knocking it, but it's to a point. Yeah, you can do anything to a point, unless it's going to kill you.
Yeah. And I think that, and again, you can do, like, I mean, you look at David Goggins, that guy is a freaking maniac. And like, he's run until his knees have basically completely destroyed and he still runs. And yes, you can, but do you
Oh, that
really?
guy, yeah, he's hilarious.
I mean, he's
The one
hilarious.
that swears a lot.
Yeah, stay hard,
Yeah, yeah.
motherfucker. Like, I love him to a certain point, but at the same, and
That's negative exercise addiction, no?
it is, but it's also, he's the kind of guy who is, he's pushing, he literally wants to see what the end
How
of, like,
far can I go?
what is the, how far can this human, which is amazing, because you want some people like that who are just, because it's amazing to
There's a
see
frame of
what
reference then,
possible,
isn't there?
exactly. But at the same time, for 90, but bear in mind he was a Navy SEAL and all sorts of crazy stuff, so
Yeah, he's got a certain mindset.
he's at that end. But for 90%, 95% of the population, really, as you said, starting, go for a walk,
Yeah, they
maybe.
can't even stand up straight.
But
I had people come into yoga, when I used to teach more vinyasa yoga. Can I do a headstand? I'm thinking, you can't even do Tadasana, mate.
yeah,
Look at your shoulders. I wouldn't
yeah,
say that, but I discourage them from it. I'll be like, yeah, we're not doing headstand this class. I'm
no,
thinking,
not today.
work on your posture first.
Yeah, let's get you to move your shoulder somewhere. Um, but it's, it is that thing of, I say to people when they say, oh, I'm going to take up the couch to 5K. And I was like, okay, cool. If you're going to do that though, why not, bearing in mind you're starting at the beginning, start of your breathing as well. So when you're running,
Yeah,
only nasal breathe. So, and that way you'll build in to be able to run 5Ks, all nasal breathing, and you'll improve every aspect of your cardiovascular health
literally
from,
everything.
but no one
Brain
wants to do it
health,
because actually they just
everything.
want to get straight to running. They just want to, and then they're
Yeah, I
huffing
do
and
feel like
puffing.
I'm, as you know, my background is a lot of fitness. I was a personal trainer, etc., as well as yoga teacher. I do feel that the breath is the thing that's missed out in most fitness
I
methods.
100, and I think in yoga, do you know what I
And
mean?
it's
That's
such a
technically
shame,
what,
such a missed opportunity.
if you've had a good yoga practice or teaching, then the breathing does become, the main aspect of it. But Um, anyway,
Yeah,
we've gone for over an hour now, I think, and we've still
we've
not
gone in
done
all
your.
directions, haven't we?
I know it's got, yeah, it's been good though. We'll do another one and we'll try and rein in some of these bits even more. But as everyone knows, the podcast is called Move, Breathe, Live, and I want to hopefully bring people a little something that they can maybe bring into their life to help them move, breathe, or live happier, healthier life. So what could you maybe, as with all your 20 plus years experience in the health and wellness world, what could you bring for someone to do?
Oh, well, it's going to be much more simple than probably people expect. Just do something regular. Just consistency is key. This is what I've learned over the years. And I've been quite incapacitated sometimes with my back injury and surgeries and whatnot that I've had. So just little and often, I think works for most people. So these sort of big goals of running a 10K at some point, that's wonderful. But just like you just said, start small and do something every day, because before you know it, you've done 2 hours exercise in a week, and that's actually quite a lot.
Mm.
So say if you just do 10 minutes in the morning, it could just be walking your kids to school instead of driving, and then walking to the supermarket later instead of driving, getting canvas bags to your shopping's equal either side. There's some resistance training. Job done. That's it. You don't even have to pay a gym membership. People think they've got
Love
to put
it.
a lot of money into this. They really, really don't. When you're putting laundry in the washing machine, squat down, don't bend forwards. Going up the stairs, take 2 stairs at a time. Maybe walk around the
Oh,
house. I did this in lockdown. I had a latex band around my legs, and I'd walk. The kids would laugh at me. I'd walk around. I'd be like, the gym's shut. I got to get something. I've got
this
to
is
keep myself
amazing. I
safe.
love it.
And before you know it, you've done an hour-long resistance training on your legs. So I mean, put it around your thighs, otherwise you'll trip over things. But not your ankles. That would be hilarious. So consistency is key. I've got a new platform just opened up this week. It's Sally Parks Yoga Club, and we've got a ton of stuff on there from 5 minutes through to an hour. The focus is women's health. Of course, men and anyone in between the genders can join. There'll be something for everyone. It's not for profit. It's you can get 2 weeks free trial, all on my website. Just head over there, sallyparksyoga.com. And then thereafter, it's £5 a month, literally £5 a month, just to cover my costs and my teachers' costs. It's not just me teaching on, they've got some other excellent teachers. So if you need some guidance from actual professionals, then there's classes for everyone on there. And we're adding things in every week. So next week, we've got a new release. I'm going to have just 10-minute Pilates classes. There'll be Pilates for shoulders, Pilates for the back, Pilates for the glutes, etc. That'll be uploaded next week. Following week, I've had a lot of requests for weight training for women. So I'll be putting some weight training drills up on the next week. So there's going to be new releases every week. It's cheap as chips. You just miss out on one coffee a month in order to pay for it after the free trial's over. Or just do the free trial and then check out. That's also cool. I've got YouTube as well. Again, just my name, Sally Parks Yoga. Stuff on there as well.
And that's really, where people can find you everywhere.
What's that?
And that's where people can find you if they want to come find you. So I'll obviously put all of this in the show notes. So
thank
Instagram,
you.
I know you just got hacked, but you've still got.
I did just get hacked. Yeah. So let's say it's be on the safe side. Website.
Cool.
Website. And my phone number's on there. People can WhatsApp me. That's cool.
Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, literally all of those little bits you just said of like around the house, going shopping, squat down to do your laundry, etc. Love it. Absolutely love it. That's what, I mean, that's to me, that's what it's just human movement. Just
just move well when you move.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sally.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for everything you do, because I do appreciate it. And like, I absolutely love my training. As a man, if you are a man listening to this and you think that maybe actually doing something towards pregnancy or post or prenatal or anything like that.
Yeah, we've got fertility training as well. That's with another teacher, Naomi Louise Rudge, and menopause training starting in February. So we've kind of got the whole female cycle now, babes.
So definitely go and check Sally out on that. As a man, I'm saying that. So if you're a male yoga teacher, definitely go and see Sally, because she's the cool one. She's definitely the person you want to go and train with if you're a dude.
Thank you. I love dudes. Love dudes.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Right. Well, thanks, Sally. And
thanks, mate.
Thank you all for listening. And we'll see you all next week. Cheers, guys.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mish. Okay.